Didn't know I carried. But the instructor smiled kindly and said, "There's no rush. You're already here. That's enough." No one had said that to me in a long time. I started walking to the weekend market every Saturday. I'd browse stalls of peaches and goat cheese, hand-knitted socks, and homemade candles. One morning, as I reached for a basket of tomatoes, I heard a familiar voice. Behind me, "Rachel." I turned. It was Marissa, an old college friend I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. She looked the same, if not more radiant. We hugged awkwardly, laughed at the surprise, and ended up grabbing iced coffee nearby. "You look really good," she said after a pause, like peaceful, healthier than I remember. I wasn't sure how to respond, but the words landed softly, like a truth I hadn't dared believe. We talked for an hour about work, life, books, nothing heavy. She didn't ask about my family, and I didn't offer. There was no space for old roles or quiet apologies. Just two women rediscovering themselves. That night back home, I looked in the mirror. Same eyes, same face. But something had changed. My shoulders no longer curled inward. My jaw wasn't tight. I hadn't flinched at my phone, vibrating in over a week. Healing doesn't announce itself. It slips in, quietly like light between blinds. And when you notice it, you realize you've been building something new all along without anyone's permission, without anyone's blueprint. The following weekend, Marissa and I met again, this time for brunch at a little cafe tucked behind a bookstore. It was the kind of place with handwritten menus and mismatched chairs. The air filled with a scent of cinnamon and old paper. We talked about her kids, her freelance projects, the yoga retreat she was planning. Then she said it. "I didn't want to bring this up, but I remember Lucas reaching out a couple years ago. He asked if I knew any lenders who'd overlooked credit issues. He said you were helping him start over, but that you were too busy to apply for things, so he'd be handling paperwork on your behalf. He made it sound like you'd agreed to it." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What kind of paperwork?" I asked, keeping my voice even. Marissa hesitated. "He mentioned small online loans, short-term stuff. I didn't think much of it at the time. He said it was under your name, but managed by him." I didn't answer. My fork lay untouched next to my half-eaten omelet. Later that afternoon, back in my apartment, I sat at the kitchen table, with my laptop open and a weight pressing against my ribs. I pulled up my credit monitoring account, something I'd signed up for years ago, but rarely checked unless I was apartment hunting. 3 entries I didn't recognize. 3 different online lenders, all within the past 18 months, all with my name on them. The amounts weren't huge, $400, $700, $950, but each marked as delinquent. Each opened from an IP address located in Colorado Springs. I felt my vision blur. He had done it. Lucas had used my information again. And this time, he hadn't even needed a signature. He just needed my name, my birthday, and enough personal details he could guess from years of proximity. Or maybe Mom gave him what he didn't already have. The thought made my stomach turn. I sat frozen for a long time, unable to move. Then I slowly slid off the chair and onto the floor, my back against the cabinets. I pulled my knees to my chest and let my head rest against them. I didn't cry. Not at first. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the fraud. It was the betrayal layered on top of betrayal. The knowing, the deliberate choice to hurt me and gamble that I either wouldn't notice or wouldn't fight back. Because that's who I was to them. The safe bet, the one who could be manipulated, borrowed from, erased. Tears came suddenly like a dam cracking open. I didn't sob, didn't wail, just silent, shaking tears that soaked through the sleeves of my sweater. I sat there until the sun shifted across the floor, until the room darkened and I could barely see the screen anymore. I had been rebuilding, planting, healing, and now here I was back on the floor. The envelope was thin, white, slightly crumpled, stamped with the bank's logo. It arrived 2 days after I discovered the fraudulent loans, as if fate had decided to strike in rhythm. At first, I thought it was junk mail, but the return address was from a mortgage servicing company I vaguely recognized. I sat at the table holding it like a burning matchstick. When I opened it, the words jumped off the page like sirens. Notice of delinquency, 8 months. Past due. Property in pre-foreclosure. I read the letter 3 times. Then I stared at the kitchen wall for a long while, letting the words settle in like dust. 8 months. I had been sending money regularly, at least until I walked away. Sometimes more than $1,000 a month. Always earmarked for the mortgage. Mom had texted me payment due dates, sent crying emojis, forwarded vague reminders from the bank. I had wired the money like clockwork, but apparently it never reached its destination. I picked up my phone with numb fingers and called the number listed on the notice. After navigating the automated maze, a customer service rep named Daniel answered, his voice professional but gentle. I just need to verify the mortgage status for 847 Westview Lane, I said. I'm not on the deed, but I've been making payments on behalf of my family. There was a pause. Can you confirm the names of the homeowners? I gave them. Thank you. One moment. I listened to the click of keys and the faint shuffle of papers through the receiver. Then Daniel returned. The account is 8 months delinquent. Notices have been sent regularly. The loan is currently in pre-foreclosure status. A final demand letter went out 3 weeks ago. I inhaled sharply. So even before I stopped sending money, the mortgage wasn't being paid. That's correct. Our records show the last full payment received was almost 9 months ago. I closed my eyes. Thank you. After the call, I stared at my phone for a full minute before dialing Lucas. He answered on the second ring, sounding irritated. What now? I didn't greet him. I just spoke to the bank. The mortgage hasn't been paid in 8 months. Silence. I was sending money, Lucas. Regularly. Where did it go? He scoffed. You didn't send the full amount. Mom said it was just enough to keep us going. We covered what we could. You covered nothing, I said, my voice rising. You used the money for God knows what and lied to me about it. Don't blame me because you didn't follow up. You chose to send it without asking questions. My hand tightened around the phone. I trusted you. He laughed bitterly. Well, that's on you. That sentence snapped something inside me. The blame, the indifference, the entitlement. I was done absorbing the shock. I was done being the safety net no one thanked. I hung up. The silence afterward was louder than anything he could have said. I couldn't sleep that night. Even after the phone call ended, even after I shut off the lights and buried myself under the covers, the weight of it pressed against my chest like stone. The words kept looping in my head. That's on you. Like this was my fault. Like all of it had been. At 2:14 a.m., I got out of bed and went to the hallway closet. I pulled down the battered file box I hadn't touched in over a year. It was the one I'd taken when I left their house, filled hastily with tax returns, lease agreements, and random family paperwork I thought I might need. I dug through folders until I found a manila envelope marked mortgage docs copy. My hands trembled as I opened it. The papers inside were mostly old statements and correspondence. But then toward the back, I found something that made my blood run cold. A copy of a mortgage. The phone lit up again. Elaine, Walter, Lucas. Names that once meant warmth now made my skin crawl. 6 months ago, my mother spat the words, "Get out. You're not family anymore." So I did. I walked out with nothing but silence and the taste of betrayal. Now their texts flood in. Lucas is overwhelmed. Dad's insurance lapsed. Can you help? I used to think being needed meant I mattered. I was wrong. Love shouldn't feel like debt collection, and this time I'm not answering. Because you can't return to a place that never saw you as home. The apartment was silent, except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan spinning, like a lazy thought above my head. I sat curled in a second-hand chair near the window, a lukewarm cup of coffee resting on the sill. My phone lit up again. Vibrating once, then twice, like a pulse I didn't ask for. The names were the same. Elaine, Walter, Lucas. I didn't have to unlock the screen to know what they wanted. The messages always came in clusters, never just one. Can you help us with the heating bill? Lucas is stressed again. Can you talk to him? Dad's insurance needs to be renewed. They always arrived like demands dressed up as concern. And every time they did, I felt the same tightening in my chest. A mix of shame, anger, and a familiar ache I hadn't yet learned how to unname. My apartment wasn't much. A one-bedroom rental with scuffed hardwood floors and chipped paint along the baseboards. But it was mine. It didn't ask for more than I could give. It didn't send guilt-tripped messages at 2 a.m. or act like survival was my personal obligation. Here, if the dishes piled up, it was because I left them. If a bill wasn't paid, the fault was mine alone. For the first time in years, that sense of responsibility didn't feel crushing. It felt fair. 6 months ago, I left. There was no dramatic fight, no slammed doors or shattered plates, just a quiet sentence dropped like a blade. Didn't light the lavender candle I usually lit to start the day. Instead, I sat at my dining table, contract in hand, and stared at my phone. I didn't want closure. I didn't want apologies. I wanted truth. Whatever version of it they were willing to admit. I dialed Mom first. She picked up on the first ring. Rachel, she breathed like she'd been expecting this. I was just about to call you. We got another notice. The bank. I found the contract. I interrupted. Silence. My name is co-borrower. More silence. Then you signed it. No, I signed something else. Something you handed me and called symbolic. You knew what you were doing. She exhaled sharply. We were desperate. That doesn't make it right. We didn't forge anything, Rachel. You signed it. You were helping us. That's what family does. You tricked me, I said quietly. And you let me keep paying while pretending I was the only one who could save you. Her voice cracked. You don't understand what it's like to watch everything fall apart. Your father, he's getting older. Lucas hasn't caught a break. We thought if we could just get through a few more months. So, you lied to me. Stole from me. It wasn't stealing. She snapped, suddenly defensive. You're our daughter. You were supposed to help. I couldn't breathe for a second. That sentence, you were supposed to help, hit harder than anything else. It wasn't a request. It was a belief. A script they had written long ago. One I'd never agreed to but had followed anyway. I didn't hang up. I didn't yell. I just said, put Dad on. A moment later, his voice came through growly and distant. Rachel, he said. Your mother's upset. I imagine so, he paused. What's done is done. Let's focus on fixing this. We're still your family. No, I said firmly. You're people I share blood with. That's not the same thing. She's emotional, he muttered. You don't have to make this worse. I didn't make it worse. You did. You all did. Another pause. Then he said, if you were a good daughter, you'd understand. I let out a bitter laugh. And if you were good parents, you wouldn't need me to carry your lives. I didn't wait for more. Put Lucas on. A shuffle. Then what? His voice was sharp. Defensive. You used my name for loans again. So, you have good credit. You never asked. I didn't think I had to. I was shaking, but not from fear, from fury. You thought I'd just roll over again like always. You're overreacting. I closed my eyes. You never once said thank you. Not for the rent, not for the repairs, not for the groceries. Silence. Then soft, almost mocking. You need us to thank you, to feel important. That's sad. And just like that, I knew there was no saving this. I didn't respond to Lucas. I didn't argue or explain or try to make him see. There was nothing left to say. To someone who believed using me was justified because I didn't collapse under the weight of it. Mom came back on the line. Her voice was calmer now, rehearsed like she'd switched masks mid-P performance. Rachel, she began. We all said things we didn't mean. But deep down, you know we love you. No, I said I don't. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't deny it. Instead, she said something that froze time. We never really thought of you as part of this family. Not the same way as Lucas. You were just always so capable, so put together. It made sense you'd be the one to support everyone. That was your role. She said it like she was stating the weather, like it was obvious. I didn't feel a dagger. I didn't feel heat rising in my chest or tears stinging my eyes. I felt nothing. Just a strange, pure clarity. They hadn't seen me as their daughter. They had seen me as the bank, the fixer, the responsible one, the one who didn't cry or collapse or ask for anything. I had mistaken being needed for being loved, and they had happily let me. I pulled the phone from my ear and stared at the screen for a moment, the active call still ticking. Then I hung up. I didn't slam the phone or throw it across the room. I simply opened my contacts, scrolled to Mom, and tapped block this caller. I did the same for Dad, then Lucas. Then I opened the group chat labeled family. I typed one sentence. I'm not your backup plan anymore. Goodbye. Then I exited the chat, deleted the thread, and placed my phone face down on the table. Outside, the sky had shifted from gray to gold. The sun dipped behind the neighboring buildings, casting soft streaks across my balcony. The rosemary plant rustled in the breeze. I stood there for a long moment, just breathing. No notifications, no guilt, no waiting for the next crisis to drag me under. I brewed a cup of peppermint tea, the same kind Mom used to make when she wanted something. But this cup wasn't for her. It was mine. I curled up in my chair by the window, blanket over my legs, the warmth of the mug grounding me. I didn't know what the future looked like. I didn't know how I'd recover from the debt, the credit hits, the legal fallout. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Because peace, I realized, isn't the absence of noise. It's the absence of expectation. And I was finally. You think you're better than us now, my mother said. Then go and don't come back. Her voice wasn't raised, but it sliced just the same. I stood in the hallway of that old house, duffel bag in hand, heart stuttering in disbelief. I remember the sound of the hallway clock ticking louder than usual. I didn't say anything, not because I wanted to be noble, but because I had nothing left to say. The words had dried up from years of biting my tongue, folding my needs into the seams of their expectations. I still remember the way the floor creaked under my boots as I walked to the door. No one stopped me. No one even looked up. My father sat with the TV remote in his lap, eyes glued to a sports channel. Lucas mumbled something about not finishing his game. And my mother, she stood there with her arms crossed like she was waiting for me to apologize, to beg. I didn't. The air outside was cold. February wind nipped at my cheeks as I stepped into the driveway. I didn't have a plan, just enough gas in the car to get somewhere. That didn't have resentment. That night, I slept in a hotel an hour away, staring at the beige ceiling and wondering what came next. For the first time, the silence didn't terrify me. It felt like the beginning of something, even if I didn't know what. Back then, I told myself I'd only be gone a week, maybe two. Just enough time to clear my head. But time stretches strangely when no one is asking you to carry their weight. Days became weeks. Weeks became 6 months, and still the messages came. I turned my phone screen down on the table, the buzz still humming against the wood like a fly I couldn't sweat. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that I cared for so long without return that I'd run out of room to keep caring. My therapist once said, love without reciprocity becomes servitude. I think I nodded. But only now do I fully understand what she meant. My eyes landed on the photo frame tucked between a stack of books on the shelf. It was the only picture I took from that house. Me at age 12 standing next to my science fair project. No one else in the photo. They hadn't come that day. I remembered calling my mother afterward asking why. She said Lucas had a dentist appointment. You understand, right? I said I did, but maybe I never truly did. I remember the exact day I left because I had just wired over the largest amount I'd ever sent them. $3,500. It was for the mortgage, or so they said. Mom had called me during a client meeting, her voice dripping with urgency. And just enough maternal guilt to crack my defenses. We're about to lose the house, Rachel. Your father's pension. Check bounced and the bank is breathing down our necks if you still care at all. And I did. I always did. So I transferred the money before I'd even left the office that day, before I'd even eaten lunch. I didn't think. I just acted like I always had. But when I got to the house that evening, groceries in hand, hoping for at least a warm thank you, I walked into a hurricane. Mom met me at the kitchen doorway, eyes blazing. She hadn't even checked the account yet. She didn't ask how I was. She just launched into a tirade about how I was trying to buy their approval. You think throwing money at us makes up for everything? She spat. You think it buys love? I stood there in stunned silence, still holding the bag of groceries. I was just trying to help, I murmured. She shook her head like I was disgusting. Money can't fix what's broken, Rachel. You've been distant for years. Do you even know your brother anymore? He's suffering and all you do is work. You think that makes you better than us? That was the final blow. I didn't yell back. I didn't cry. I simply turned around and walked out, leaving the groceries on the counter. The door didn't slam. It clicked shut behind me with surgical precision. I remember the sound clearly, like a punctuation mark at the end of a chapter. Later that night, I sat alone in my apartment, still in my work clothes, staring at the single photo frame I had brought with me, an old faded snapshot from a birthday party I barely remembered. In it, I'm about 9 years old, standing off to the side of a group shot, eyes slightly turned away from the camera. The edges of the photo are curled, the colors faded, but it's the only one I have, the only proof I was ever part of something called family. I keep that photo on the shelf not for nostalgia, but as a kind of evidence, not of love but of proximity, that I was there, that I mattered once, even if only as a footnote in someone else's story, and still there's a part of me buried under layers of logic and self-preservation that wonders if maybe, just maybe, I really did try to buy their love. Maybe I thought that by providing, by giving more than anyone else, I could earn my place, that I could finally be seen. But that's the thing about people who are used to taking. They'll never see the hand behind the gift. Just the gift. And if it stops coming, they see betrayal, not boundaries. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan, spinning shadows across the wall. I realized I wasn't angry. I was hollow. And that was scarier, because anger means you still care. Hollow means you've gone numb. I never got a thank you for that $3,500. No one ever mentioned it again. It disappeared into the same void as every other sacrifice I made. Every late night call, every emergency payment, every just this once that turned into always. And yet here they were again, calling, texting, pleading, asking for more. But something had shifted. This time I didn't feel guilt. I felt something else. Resolve. When I was 8, I accidentally knocked over a glass of orange juice at the breakfast table. It splashed onto the floor, and before I could reach for a towel, my mother's voice rang out sharp and fast. Rachel, what did I tell you about being careful? Lucas was sitting across from me, his mouth ringed with jelly, quietly flipping through his coloring book. No one asked if he'd bumped the table. No one even looked in his direction. I spent the next 10 minutes wiping up the mess, trying not to cry. It wasn't an isolated moment. My childhood was stitched together from tiny, quiet injustices that never quite screamed abuse, but always whispered neglect. I was the mature one, the responsible one, the one who understood things better. Lucas was the baby, even when we were both teenagers. Every Saturday morning, Mom would hand me the chore list. Vacuum the living room, dust the baseboards, clean the upstairs bathroom. Lucas, just make sure you brush your teeth and don't stay in your pajamas all day. If he remembered to take the trash out, it was cause for celebration. Dad would ruffle his hair and say, "That's my boy. Learning responsibility." I don't think Lucas ever did a load of laundry until he was 25. By then, I had already worked 2 part-time jobs, helped pay off mom's credit card debt after her knee surgery, and skipped spring break trips in college so I could send money home. The thing that stung the most wasn't the work. It was the erasure. I didn't want applause or banners. I just wanted to be seen. But praise was a currency reserved for Lucas. He once won a participation ribbon in a community soccer league and Mom posted it on the fridge like it was a gold medal. I made the dean's list 5 semesters in a row. No one mentioned it. When we were 13 and 10, respectively, Lucas crashed his bike into the side of our neighbor's minivan. The mirror cracked clean off. He came home with scraped knees and a sheepish grin. I watched Mom hug him tightly, kiss his forehead, and murmur, "It's okay. Accidents happen." 2 weeks later, I forgot to defrost the chicken before she got home from work. She didn't yell. She didn't have to. Her disappointed silence did more damage than shouting ever could. Even now, as an adult, I catch myself flinching when I hear a tone shift in someone's voice, bracing for judgment. That's what those years taught me. To anticipate rejection, to prepare for blame even when I had done nothing wrong. It's a survival instinct dressed as humility. Sometimes I wonder if Lucas even realized the imbalance. If he saw the weight I carried or just assumed that's what older sisters were. For quiet background figures holding the walls up while he played in the center of the room. I used to think that if I worked hard enough, if I stayed quiet and helpful and unobtrusive, someone would notice they never did. Or, worse, maybe they did and just didn't care. As I sat on my small couch in Denver, feet tucked beneath me, those memories came back uninvited, like ghosts pulling at the corners of my mind. Not loud, just persistent, just enough to remind me that history doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just whispers the same old truths until you believe them. But I don't believe them anymore. It started with a letter I almost threw away. I was sorting through a stack of unopened mail, most of it junk, coupons, credit card offers, a catalog for some expensive home decor store I'd never shopped at. Then, tucked between a bed Bath and Beyond flyer and a water bill, I found it, a formal envelope from a loan servicing company, my name printed on the front. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I hadn't applied for any loans in the past year, and I definitely hadn't missed any payments. But as I opened it, a pit started to form in my stomach. The letter wasn't a bill. It was a confirmation. An account under my name had been co-signed. The loan amount, $18,400. Borrower, Lucas Miller. Co-signer, Rachel Miller. I froze. My hands trembled slightly as I scanned the page again, looking for any indication this was a scam, but the details were correct. My address, my birthday, even a partial social security number I recognized. And then I remembered 16 months ago, Mom had called me in a panic. Lucas was starting a business, a graphics venture, she'd said, and he needed equipment. A new laptop, software, camera gear. He just needs a little push, she'd pleaded. Can you help him get a loan? It'll be in his name, of course. He just needs someone to vouch for him. You know how credit is these days. I was rushing to a late meeting and barely had time to listen. I remember her saying, "It's not a real loan in your name, just your signature to help him get started. They won't bother you again after this." I signed the document she emailed me while sitting in a cab, half reading it between sips of cold coffee. I never followed up. Now staring at this letter, I felt my chest tighten in a way I hadn't expected. Not just from fear, though that was there, but from shame. How had I let myself get pulled in so easily? How had I let them talk me into giving something I didn't fully understand? The answer was simple. I trusted them. And maybe that was my mistake. All this time I had cast myself as the victim. Overworked, underappreciated, emotionally discarded. But now I had to ask a harder question. Had I been complicit in my own undoing? I said yes when I should have asked more questions. I gave when I should have drawn lines. I didn't read the fine print literally and metaphorically. It didn't make their actions right, but it did make mine naive. That realization sank deep into my bones. I wasn't just a casualty of their manipulation. I had been an enabler. Not out of weakness, but out of a desperate hope that if I gave enough, loved enough, supported enough, they'd finally see me. Instead, I'd signed myself into liability. I sat on the edge of my bed, the letter in my lap, and let the weight of it all settle in. If Lucas defaulted, and judging by the language in this notice, he already had, I was on the hook legally, financially, personally, and emotionally. I was already paying the price. I looked at the framed photo. Again, me at that forgotten birthday party, slightly turned away from the camera. I wondered, not for the first time, if I'd spent my whole life just slightly turned away, hoping they'd notice, hoping they'd turn me back around. But now I was facing forward, and for once, I was really seeing the truth. The message came at 4:17 p.m. on a Friday. Emergency, come home. It's serious. Mom. No details, no follow-up, just that vague, manipulative urgency she had perfected over the years. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, letting the silence speak for me the way they always had. But something in me itched, a mix of curiosity and habit. So, against my better judgment, I drove the 90 minutes south to the house I hadn't seen since I left it behind, with a quiet click of the front door. As I pulled up the familiar driveway, I noticed the front steps looked more cracked than I remembered, weeds curling between the cement slabs. The porch light was on, even though it wasn't dark. Yet, a beacon or maybe a warning. I stepped inside without knocking. The living room looked exactly the same. Same beige sofa with its sagging cushions. Same coffee table cluttered with coasters and unopened mail. Same scent of lemons scented floor cleaner that never quite masked the underlying bitterness of the house. Mom was in the kitchen, arms crossed, face tight with something between frustration and fatigue. Dad sat silently at the dining table, his cap pulled low over his brow, fingers tracing the rim of a cold mug. And Lucas. He was sprawled on the couch, controller in hand, eyes glued to the screen as if nothing had changed. You came, Mom said, not with relief, but expectation. You said it was serious, I replied, setting down my bag. What happened? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she gestured for me to sit. I didn't. Finally, she exhaled sharply. The house. We're months behind on the mortgage. The bank is threatening foreclosure. Your father's medical bills are stacking up. Lucas's student loan got denied. We're drowning, Rachel. I waited, knowing the pitch was coming. We just need a little more help, just for a few months until things stabilize. There it was. I shook my head slowly. I've already sent over thousands. Where did that go? Dad looked up then, his voice low. That was just to cover short-term stuff, unexpected expenses. You know how life is. Lucas didn't even look up. If you're here to judge, you can go. I stared at him, slouched and smug, like the world owed him a break for simply existing. I'm not here to judge, I said, evenly. But I'm not here to be used either. Mom bristled. Used? Rachel, this is your family. You don't just walk away when things get hard. I almost laughed. That's rich coming from the woman who told me to leave and never come back. She flinched, but only for a second. You're being dramatic, she said, waving a hand like swatting a fly. You were emotional. We all were. No, I said firmly. You were cruel and you meant it. Silence followed. The kind of silence that doesn't invite peace, but simmers with judgment. After everything we've done for you, Dad muttered. I turned to him. What have you done for me exactly besides guilt-trip me into funding your lives? Lucas finally spoke. You think just because you make a little money, you're better than us? I felt my jaw tighten. No, I think I deserve to not be the only adult in the room. Mom's voice went shrill. We didn't call you here for a lecture, Rachel. We called because we need support. Real families help each other. I looked at each of them, the people I had bled for, in quiet, invisible ways. And then I said the one thing I knew would land like a stone in water. Maybe we're not a real family. Lucas snorted. Not a real family? That's funny coming from someone who signed a formal agreement to support us. I turned to him. Slowly. What are you talking about? He looked away from the TV for the first time. The financial support document you volunteered. Don't act like you're some victim now. My stomach dropped. What? Financial document? Mom's expression flickered. Too quick for anyone else to notice, but I caught it. That split. Second of hesitation, guilt, fear. Then it vanished. You know, she said too casually, that paper we had you sign last spring, the family support letter. I blinked. You told me it was a letter of emotional affirmation, that it was just something for your church group's reconciliation initiative. You said it was symbolic. Lucas scoffed. It wasn't symbolic to the bank. They used it when applying for refinancing. Said it showed you were committed to covering a portion of the debt. I felt like the floor had tilted beneath me. You used that paper to apply for credit. Mom's voice turned defensive. We didn't lie. You did say you'd help. I didn't say I'd guarantee a loan. Dad finally spoke. His voice scratchy with age. You're reading too much into this. It's not like it's legally binding. Lucas laughed. Actually, it kind of is. The bank saw her as an informal cosigner. They approved based on that assumption. I mean, it helped. I stood there, a pulse pounding in my ears. That document, I barely remembered the contents. I had signed it in the kitchen while Mom hovered over me, urging me to finish quickly before dinner got cold. I'd barely skimmed it. It was written in flowery language about shared family responsibility and ongoing support rooted in love. At the time, I thought it was corny but harmless. Something to keep Mom happy, a favor, nothing more. Now it had been weaponized. I backed away, needing space to breathe. You forged a financial obligation using my name. Mom stepped forward. We didn't forge anything. You signed it. You gave us permission. No, I didn't. Not for this. Not for debt. Not for risk. You manipulated me into thinking it was symbolic. You always twist things, she said, her tone icy. You want to be a martyr so badly. I looked at Lucas, whose smirk had faded slightly. You knew what you were doing? He shrugged. Mom said you were on board. Said you wanted to help. And you didn't think to verify that? Ask me directly. Why would I? He snapped. You've always helped. That's what you do. There it was, the most honest sentence in the room. That's what you do. That's what I had become to them. A reflex, a resource, an unspoken ATM dressed in business casual. I had been offering support, thinking it was a lifeline. They'd been building a scaffold with my name on it, one plank at a time. I picked up my bag with shaking hands. I'm done. Mom's eyes widened. Rachel, no. I'm done. My voice cracked, but it held firm. I didn't come here to be lied to. Again. Dad said nothing. Luca sank back into the couch, muttering something under his breath. Mom opened her mouth, then closed it. No apologies, no regret. Just the faint disappointment of a plan unraveling. I opened the door. The hallway was cold, the light dim. I stepped through it without looking back. And this time, I didn't even hear the click of the door behind me. Back in my apartment, I didn't bother turning on the lights. The fading daylight slipping through the blinds was enough. I dropped my bag by the door, kicked off my shoes, and went straight to my desk. My laptop sat there half-charged, waiting like a loyal witness. I opened it and clicked on the folder labeled Family Finances. It had started as a simple Excel sheet to track the occasional utility bill or grocery reimbursement. But over the years, it had evolved into something more. A digital diary of debt disguised as duty. Each row held a transaction. Each cell a memory. And every column reminded me how often I had said yes when I wanted to scream no. $189. 36 tax. Electric bill. Mom called late at night. Said, we're freezing here. $72. 91 water bill. Lucas forgot to pay again. For $150. Shuro, urgent car repair. Mom, we can't get to the pharmacy without it. $200. Laptop for Lucas. Just a small loan. He's trying to start over. $900 earned. Medical co-I for Dad. We'll pay you back with the next pension check. $2,000. Ours mortgage gap during Christmas. You don't want us to lose the house during the holidays, do you? Line after line. Each amount felt small in the moment. But now, scrolling to the bottom, the total glared back at me like a slap. $19. 00040. 17. That's how much I had given quietly, consistently, without contracts, without promises kept, without even a thank you card. I leaned back in the chair, exhaustion sweeping over me. It wasn't just about the money. It was what each dollar represented. Sacrifice, sleep, skipped vacations, groceries returned at checkout because I prioritized someone else's emergency. I clicked into the notes column I'd added recently. A way to remind myself of the context. Mom said just this once. Lucas promised to repay in 2 months. Dad said he'd call the insurance company next week. Still waiting. A bitter smile crept to my lips. I had written these notes like a historian documenting a slow collapse. Objective, measured, even hopeful. But reading them now, they sounded like entries in a journal of self-deception. Some part of me had always believed they'd make it up to me. That one day I'd get a call out of the blue and hear, "Thank you. We couldn't have done it without you." But that call never came. Instead, what I got was silence, or worse, entitlement. They didn't see what I gave as generosity. They saw it as obligation. A daughter's duty, an older sibling's role, as if I had been born with a contract stapled to my birth certificate. Must support at all costs. I clicked save and closed the file. Then I sat there staring at the blank desktop, my reflection faintly visible in the dark screen. For years, I had been the safety net, but no one ever asked if I had a net of my own. I didn't intend to dig. I just wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. That the numbers on my spreadsheet weren't exaggerations born from bitterness. But curiosity is a strange thing. It starts as a whisper and becomes a compulsion. While searching through an old email chain from my mother labeled urgent in all caps, I stumbled upon a PDF attachment I'd never opened. The subject line had read backup for tax purposes, which I'd ignored, assuming it was another vague request to help her sort things out. But that day, something told me to look. It was a monthly statement from her personal checking account. The date, 6 months prior, right? Around the time she claimed they were barely holding on and had no other options but me. I scanned the list of deposits and nearly dropped my coffee. $500 from Aunt Sherry, $750 labeled L. Simmons, a family friend. $1,000 wire transfer from someone named Miller D. Likely Uncle Dan. And me, $1,300 listed simply as Rachel, mortgage help. My pulse quickened as I kept scrolling. This wasn't an isolated month. I searched my inbox, found 2 more statements she had attached in other tax emails. Same pattern, multiple sources. Each month, they had been receiving money from at least 4 different people, possibly more. Yet, every phone call, every guilt-drenched voicemail, every sigh-laced text had said the same thing. You're the only one we can count on. I felt something shift in me. Sharp, clean, irreversible. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was the narrative, the story they crafted to keep me tethered. I had believed I was essential, that without me they would sink. But now I saw the truth. I wasn't their only hope. I was just the most compliant. Not the lifeline, the lever. Why fight the hard battles with others? When Rachel says yes without asking questions, the pattern had always been the same. Lucas would mess up, miss a payment, crash a car, lose a job. Mom would soften the edges with a story. Dad would stay conveniently silent, and I would step in every time. But now I saw the structure behind the chaos. They didn't rely on me because they had no one else. They relied on me because I never pushed back. It's easier to Manipulate someone who confuses loyalty with sacrifice. I closed the laptop and sat there in silence. The hum of the refrigerator in the background suddenly deafening. A heaviness settled in my chest. But this time it didn't feel like guilt. It felt like grief. The mourning of a role I had played for too long. The quiet death of an identity I never agreed to. I wasn't their savior. I was their strategy. It started with a plant. A small pot of rosemary I picked up on a whim at the farmer's market. More out of curiosity than commitment. I hadn't gardened since elementary school when Mom let me keep a tomato sprout in the kitchen windowsill for a week before replacing it with one of Lucas's macaroni art projects. Back then it died. Quietly. No one noticed but me. But this time the rosemary thrived. Every morning, I'd water it, turn the pot slightly so each side got equal sun. I started waking up earlier just to sip my coffee near the balcony and breathe in the piney scent of new growth. It was a strange kind of ritual, but it grounded me. 2 weeks later, I added a pot of lavender, then mint, then a little planter box of cherry tomatoes. Before I knew it, my second-floor balcony had become a tiny jungle of green. Imperfect, uneven, but alive. For the first time in years, I was tending to something that didn't ask, demand, or guilt. It just grew when given care and gave back without expectations. I signed up for a beginner's yoga class at the community center downtown. The first class, I fumbled every pose, my limbs stiff with years of tension. Refinancing agreement dated nearly 2 years ago. Borrowers Walter and Elaine Miller, co-borrower Rachel Miller. I blinked. My name was right there, typed cleanly in black ink, nestled between my father's and mother's. No one had ever told me I was on this. I flipped to the signature page and there it was, my signature, shaky, slanted. It looked like mine, but I never signed this, at least not knowingly. I stared at the date. It was the same weekend Mom had insisted I sign that symbolic family support letter. The one she said was for church documentation. The one I had skimmed and signed without question. Too tired to read. Too trusting to resist. They hadn't just misused my name. They had attached it to a legal document that bound me to debt, to a property I didn't own, to a lie I never agreed to tell. This wasn't just manipulation. It was fraud. And now I understood why Mom had pushed so hard for my continued involvement. Why the guilt trips had escalated, why Lucas had been so bold, because they had bet everything on me never finding out. My breath came shallow as I sat back on the floor, contract in one hand, the other bracing my forehead. The reality was too loud to silence. I was legally tied to their failure, and they never even told me. They had used my trust as a tool, my love as leverage, my presence as protection. And when I stepped away, they blamed me for the house crumbling. But I wasn't the cause. I was the cover. I let the contract slip from my fingers onto the floor. The hardwood felt cold beneath me, but I didn't move. I had thought I'd hit rock bottom before. When I was crying on the bathroom floor after Mom's last outburst. When Lucas used my name for loans, when I realized my $20,000 had vanished into silence. But this was deeper. This was betrayal. Etched in ink. And it was the last straw. The next morning, I didn't make coffee. I didn't water the plants. I